Welcome to Stepdad Success, turning the tide on the way stepdads are seen and show up in the world. We're a new breed of leaders raising leaders. Blood or no blood, we raise them as our own. We're connected, loving, and committed to leading them into the future. If you asked a normal dad, he'd say we're doing the impossible. He'd say, but they're not yours. How do you do it? Yet every day, stepdads around the world are forging the way. That's what we call Stepdad Success. We're leaders raising leaders. And these are our stories.
Good morning, this is James Quabass. It's a bright and early morning here in Australia, and today we've got another interview with another stepdad, and this time we've got Rick Blackburn. Now, Rick's from San Antonio, Texas, and he's a plastering contractor. Been a plastering contractor, or has his own business for the last 18 years, so obviously pretty stable sort of business, stable growth there. And he's got 2 stepkids, and he's got a fairly interesting background. I'll let him dive into a little bit more of that. But welcome, Rick. Awesome to have you on the call, and just really appreciate you showing up today.
Not at all. I'm happy to be here, James.
Mate, I'll start off. Maybe you can give us just a little bit of a background on yourself. As I said, you've had a fairly interesting background, and maybe you can share a little bit about that, and really we'll dive into sort of how that applies to your kids and how you're parenting and step parenting at the moment.
Sure. All right. Well, I'll try to. As you said, it's kind of interesting, and so if I miss a facet or something there, or don't hesitate to push me back on track. Or if I start going too far, let me know.
No problem. You just go where you need to go. Well, as I said, we'll just see where it takes us.
My family was a military family. My dad was is now a retired naval officer, and mom was a stay-at-home mom early, and then a work mom later. But we were all my two sisters and a brother were all natural kids. But coming up, big age difference between the older 2 siblings and the younger 2 siblings, myself and my sister.
Sure.
So not a lot of closeness between the siblings, and because of the age differences, you kind of had the older ones like, hey, leave us alone, and then the younger 2 and coming along, wanting to tag along and do stuff, but kind of being, just normal stuff, being told, hey, we the older kids didn't want the younger ones tagging along, so. So not a lot of.
I was just going to say, tell me, Rick, like being that military family, were you moving around, or were you fairly stable?
We traveled significantly. In my first 18 years, I guess we had lived 3, 4, 5 different places.
Right.
And I think, I'll be honest, I'm one of these people. I believe in 100% accountability and responsibility, personal responsibility. So if I say something that, to give backstory, I'm not giving any, I want to make you, there's no excuse for, we all make our own decisions. We all make our own choices.
Sure.
I can suggest that, hey, some of this backstory, maybe that led to my thinking in this or something, but I'm responsible for my life. So,
sure.
Anyway, certainly the moving around as a military family was tough for me. As a younger kid, it didn't. It's really weird, the differences in the world. As a young kid, you don't see it. It's like we're taught the differences. And I mean in people. As we grow up, we start off we're this incredibly new and great creature. And along the way, we learn all these bad habits.
Yeah.
And one of the bad habits I picked up was seeing differences, in me and everybody else. and it wasn't in a not in a prejudice thing, but I saw a difference. You know, hey, I'm different than that. I'm different than that. I'm different than that. And those differences, to me, I took them as I'm less than. So, you know, I grew up with a lot of real kind of inferiority, you know, fear. That was just me growing up.
Cool.
And it wasn't like, say, when I was real young, but especially going into the teenage years. Oh, it was something. Now, I went through a real struggle there. And with not having the real tight-knit, you know, support from my family, even though, I mean, they were a good family, you know, I mean, the values, the standards, everything, they were doing what they thought to be the right thing, you know, raising kids. And, something, I needed something more, you know, I needed something or I needed more connection than I was getting.
Yeah.
And,
it's interesting. It's, you know, just in that you know, our parents always do the best they can do. And, you know, I'm not, you know, I've told my story before on the podcast here, but, you know, I had a very rough upbringing, Rick, and, you know, you do, you know, going to school, I remember school as just being horrible because I was much the same, you know, very much, you know, that inferiority complex and just didn't have the confidence to be out and, you know, diving into school at, you know, at 100%. So I understand where you're coming from there.
Well, I think, you take those kind of, that kind of confusion, I guess, or inner turmoil and, you know, lack of support system for whatever reason. And throw that into the teenage years and oh boy, you know, the Looney Tunes cartoons here, they always talk about Bugs Bunny pops up and says, you know, pops up out of a hole in the middle of a desert, goes, I think we should have turned left at Albuquerque. And it's kind of a joke there. And it's kind of like a little thing in my life. I look back and I go, yep, there were a whole bunch of times, man, I should have took that left at Albuquerque. And, you know, you know, getting into drinking, I found drinking and drugs at an early age, you know, around 12, 13.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, you know, early on, it wasn't to drink or drug to change the way I felt. It was just I was accepted, you know, to be a part of this group, you know.
Sure.
But again, I wasn't emotionally, mentally prepared to handle that, and it became more than that. It became to where that was how I learned how to change the way I felt, and so that led into, you know, a whole another world of getting in trouble, and you know, it was really weird. This cycle, it was like this giant snowball. The cycle created of you know, I had this love and respect for my family and this inferiority of myself, and then I would go and get in trouble. I mean, I wanted to please, but I would get in trouble, do something stupid, go out and get drunk, or, you know, get high and steal something, or, you know, get kicked out of school, or, you know, just something. And I would do something wrong, and then this massive mountain of shame and guilt would hit me, and it was even double down on the whole inferiority thing, you know. And of course, the only way I know how to get out of that bad feeling was here's more drinking, more drugs, and it was just this really, and this is I mean, honestly, this is 13, 14, 15. You know, I was a kind of a train wreck. Finally, you know, I look back at my parents and I don't know how they didn't kill me. You know, they tried everything that everybody suggested that they could manage. You know, I'm sure there were some things that people suggested, like, hey, you need to sit down and connect with him, that they weren't capable of. But they did everything that they were capable of, which was, you know, help halfway houses and hell, I was in the mental hospital and I was in programs and, you know, psychiatrists and, you know, everything, trying to figure out what's the matter with this kid. You know, why is he bent on self-destruction?
Yeah.
And anyway, that continued on. I just grew up that way. I got sober when I was 16 for a couple of years. Life kind of turned around, but I still wasn't ready for full-time sobriety or a lifetime of sobriety. I was still immature. So when I went back out again, the last time, that one lasted for about 10 years. And that one took me again down into, tried to manage my drinking, tried to manage drug use and learned to trade and worked and did all these things. But as life went on, I became very disenfranchised with my own life and how unsuccessful it was. And, I spent most of my days going to work and most of my nights sitting in a bar drinking which then eventually led to, this doesn't make me feel good anymore, and doing a lot more drugs. So from drugs, from that, I got, like I said, from the drinking, I got heavily involved in cocaine. And from the cocaine, I got into a lot of theft and ended up in prison. At 28 years old, I arrived in state penitentiary in Florida. And that was I'd been in and out of jails and stuff like that, and in and out of lots of trouble my whole life, So, but when I got to the penitentiary, it was that was my moment, that was where the light came on.
Yep.
And I just looked around at the people around me and my situation, and it clicked in my head. I said, this isn't the way life's supposed to be. I wasn't raised for this. This isn't me. And all those years of trying to be somebody else and, get away from myself, running away from myself basically got me exactly there. It got me away from myself, but it wasn't me. And, so that light switch went off that day, and I made a decision. And I almost feel like I was talking out loud. I said, I'm going to change. And I did. I spent 3.5 years in the penitentiary. And during that 3.5 years, I did everything that I could do as far as, drug treatment. So, confronting myself, learning about myself. I started trying to go to church, which I'd always struggled with. The educational stuff, anything I could do, physical, anything I could do to make myself a better person, within the confines where I was, I did. And then when I was released from prison, wasn't quite 30, let's see, I guess I was 32. I was released in Florida. And at that point, my parents were living in Texas, where I am now. And I left. So I got out of prison and I left Florida and I moved straight to Texas. And nobody in Texas knew me except my mom and my dad.
Right.
And they were giving me another shot. Here's this.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen, but we love our son, and we want to help him. So.
Sure.
I went out there and stayed with them for a couple of months, and I started working. I started my own company. All those years during the drinking and drugging, I had still learned to trade. I'd gone to work and learned something, so I had something to fall back on. But the decision I made when I got to Texas was that I was going to be, and again, this is one of those things I said out loud almost, I think. I'm going to be the person that I want to be here. This gave me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, tell me, like, you were, obviously, that was a couple of pivotal moments there in your life where you kind of, you hit the rock bottom, you end up in prison, you're like, okay, something's got to change. You obviously did a lot of work on yourself at that time. Then you get out and you're like, okay, I've got a chance. I'm going to create a new me. tell me, how long was it until you met your wife? And
it was about honestly, it was only about a year later that I met my wife. Yeah, because I was night and day, James, from who I was to who I became.
Sure.
I went. It was. I ran on this concept. I went through the. Spent a lot of time in the AA program, working the steps. Learning about honesty and integrity, and I found that I didn't have the luxury of living any other way. I had to live in integrity in everything that I did, everything I said.
Yep.
And as a result, it was a night and day difference.
And what about your wife? What sort of a background did she have? Coming into things, did she know about you, your background, or you've obviously discussed it later or whatever?
No, it was. That's a good question. We, my wife's background, she was born and raised here in San Antonio. Comes from a really good family here, close knit growing up. My wife's, I don't know if you dysfunction or whatever is with husbands. I'm number 4.
Right. Okay.
And she's my first wife. I'm her 4th husband. Both of my stepkids have different fathers. So when I met my wife, I was working on a project in a building that she managed, and I saw her and I thought, wow, this woman really seems to have it together. She's attractive and managing this. She has a good job here. And anyway, I asked her out to first. I questioned her, "Are you married?" And she says, "Sort of." It probably should have stopped at that point. I guess.
Yeah, well,
sort of was
interesting answer.
Like, what? Yeah, and anyway, she was in the process. She was separated and in the process of a divorce at the time. But we went out the first night, and that first night it was kind of I don't know how to not tell the truth anymore. So I laid it out for her the very first night we went out. I said, "This is me. I'm a drunk. I'm an ex-convict.
Yeah.
I'm a drug addict. I'm 32 years old and never been in a real serious relationship, or nothing that lasted. And, pretty much that's all you get right here. This is it." So.
And what was her reaction to that? How did she?
It was. I wish she could answer that question, but I remember she was impressed with my honesty and my ability to, my lack of fear in talking about, who I was.
Yep.
And so we kept going out,
and she had
one thing led to another, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, and she had 2 kids at the time. So,
yeah.
How long was it before you met the kids?
Probably about a month. We were kind of dating. We would get together and we'd have dinner after work. Was our big thing. I was still attending meetings, AA meetings every day. Sometimes twice a day. I did that for about 3 years after I got out of prison. It was just part of my life. And so we scheduled our time together, well, hey, I've got a meeting at 7, we can get together for dinner at 8:30 if you like, And so we started doing that and pretty much saw each other for, 4 or 5 days a week. And after about a month or so, the kids started, I said, well, why don't you bring the kids to dinner, And that was another funny story, or kind of a train wreck, because these kids had developed the chicken nugget. They were happier with a chicken nugget than they were with anything else. That's all they wanted.
Sure. Most kids are like that. They go through that stage.
It's like you've been feeding them chicken nuggets because that's what they ask for. You know, they quit feeding them what they so I come along and like, hey, come on, let's go. Let's have a nice sit down dinner. Yeah, can I have chicken nuggets? What? You know, so it was one of the kind of the funny things starting off, and so we you know, they would come to dinner with us, you know, 3 times a week, and had a real struggle.
Yeah, I was going to say, how are they reacting to you? 'Cause
it was, you know, to look back at it, I don't blame them because, you know, here I'm number 4, you know, and the one before me didn't last very long. Right. It was neither of their fathers, and he kind of turned into a real obsessive, controlling person as soon as the marriage happened. And anyway, so that marriage was very short-lived. But so I think they were just like, oh God, here's another one. You know, so now you know what is this? What is this asshole going to do? Yeah. And I wasn't.
I was going to say, tell me, like, what was your take on it? What were you kind of, you know, what was your approach to the kids at that time? Obviously, you knew a little bit of background, and
I just tried to be their friend. I mean, I look, hey, I want to be your. I mean, eventually I became their dad, but you know, I just wanted to get to know them. I wanted them I wanted to be friendly with them. You know, the craziest thing that I found for me in the early and even after we were married was that I carried so much of this prison mentality with me. You know, I mean, part of it was the prison mentality, and part of it was the way I grew up. Was, you know, when my dad said something, you just did it. You wouldn't even consider questioning. You know, and you certainly wouldn't consider not doing it. So that, and then the kind of the prison mentality of, you know, hell, when you told somebody something, you expected them to respect what you told them, and if they didn't, you know, you managed it physically, you know. Yeah. And so I think, especially with my son, with Ryan, we came with this. That's where he and I struggled. And I really take 100% responsibility there because he needed something that I didn't know how to give him. You know, I came with this kind of heavy, you know, you're going to do what I tell you to do kind of thing because you're living under my roof. And it was just a battle.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And he responded with no, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to take that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, often, and I know in myself, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, coming from a rough background, there's that reluctance to show intimacy. I know I struggled with it when I first met my, you know, step boys. They, you know, they were wanting hugs and kisses, and like I was kind of like, wow, I felt very hesitant in just becoming intimate with them. Did you have the same kind of experience? With
Ryan, absolutely. And it was just because he was so disconnected from men, you know. I mean, his mom going through the you know, Donna had divorced his dad when he was still a baby. He became abusive and she left him. And then she met Katelyn's father, and they were together for 8 years. And he became kind of a stepdad, or, you know, or a dad to Ryan.
Yeah.
And then he was gone. And I think that really kind of hurt Ryan. He was old enough to, you know, to really be struggling. He was kind of going into those teen years. And, and then of course her third marriage was, you know, I don't know, we tease her about it. She said, you know, you had to have been out of your mind. It was because the guy was just, he was pretty awful. I think she was looking for security or something for her and the kids. I mean, honestly, it was kind of a financial thing. And then he turned into be this controlling, you know, potentially violent asshole. And so her friends told her, well, you need to get away from this guy, whatever it takes. And so she did, and it was a very short-lived marriage. But, Ryan went through this really rocky time with men. And so I think he had about zero faith in men as a whole. And I didn't help that because I didn't come with the understanding or the maturity or the instructions of how to deal with that. And,
sure.
I brought what I knew. And, so the times where I think I'm trying to be patient but yet I'm trying to be firm and, I'm trying to look. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how long did it take before you kind of broke through, firstly for yourself and then with Ryan? How long till you kind of bridged the gap there? I mean, obviously, all of your background and everything and their background, like it's all, there's a massive dynamic going on there. And it's, it's really, it's not one person's kind of fault or anything like that. It's a combination of all the background stories culminating, and they kind of collide in that moment. But
I call it a train wreck.
What did it take to overcome that, and how long did it take?
With Ryan, it took a long time. I want to say Ryan was about 25 years old. So you're talking 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Of input and of course not every day, because there was a time he was going to college and it was like, oh, thank God he's gone. There was from about 16 to 18, he and I didn't speak much. I got to the point where our relationship became the most disruptive thing in the household. It was like, hey, the more I pushed that, hey, you're 16, you have to do something in school. You can't just show up and slack. I mean, there's more than that. What are you going to do? You want to go to college? You want to, and trying to have all these conversations, the adult conversations with him about, real life stuff. And he just dug his feet in, and the more I pushed, the more apathetic he became. And I got to the point where, I don't know what to do. So we didn't talk much for about 2 years. And I remember making a comment to him one night. I just told him, I pulled him aside and said, look, you keep all of your crap and your mess inside of that room right there, and don't drag it out into this house, and we're going to get along okay. And it was about like that for 2 years. Now that was kind of the ugly side. But during that time, James, the one thing I did is, it didn't matter what he did, I went there. So physical presence, I would say was one of the things I knew how to do well. If he was involved in baseball or, club baseball, and that was his love. I don't know squat about baseball, but I went to every damn game. You couldn't fault that there wasn't somebody in the stands cheering for my son.
Yeah.
So those were the investments I made, I think, because I didn't know how to win in any other way with him.
Sure.
We tried to do things together. We tried to do family things, and it just, it was a daily struggle. And I remember, finally when he went to college, I was counting the days, when he leaves for college. It was like, oh my God, thank you. And, we took him up and we got him registered and dropped him off. And I said, I'll see you in 4 years, and, so we were still, it wasn't until he graduated college and probably, I guess, in about his senior year, that's when things started to change. And I think it was a maturity thing for him, but also during that time I had changed some, while he was away. because I spent a lot of time reflecting, trying to figure out what I did wrong, what I could have done better. I still feel bad about those 2 years that we didn't talk much. I kind of gave up on him. But he came back from college and started working, and I guess there was just a little bit more trust. It wasn't, I don't want to say it was respect, but I think he looked and realized that, wow, this guy did what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to stick with me, and he said he was going to make sure that I got an education. He said that he was going to make sure that he's going to try to help me grow up the best he could.
And I'm sure turning up to those baseball games counts somewhere in the mix too, right? It's it takes a long time. Yeah,
I think you made a good point earlier that the dynamics between he and I were so so inconducive to harmony that that's how long it took. And right now, I came home from WarriorCon and brought my black book with me, and the first person that I wanted to share it with was him. And
wow, nice.
And we sat down and I handed it to him, and we talked about his life and what's going on, and which we've been doing off and on since he got out of college. We it's not an everyday thing, but maybe once a month or every couple of weeks, it's out of the blue. It calls, hey, what's going on, and we talk. And so the trust thing, I think, is really just what had to happen with him. He had to believe that
you were going to be there,
that I was going to stay, and that I cared.
So tell me on the flip side, Rick, like, what was it like with Katelyn?
Now, Katelyn was a dream.
Right?
Yeah,
so
she was
total reverse.
Polar opposite. At 8 years old, all she wanted to do was please. I mean, she was this wonderful little girl that just wanted to make the whole world happy. We didn't have a struggle for 9 years. I mean, we got along. Say we didn't have struggle. The only struggles we had were the dynamics between myself, my wife, her, and her father. And she struggled a lot with this guilty feeling because she liked me. We got along, and we did stuff together. I went to every one of her games. She was a full-time sports nut, so every day of the year we were doing something, and I was there for every one of them. School, just I loved her. She's just wonderful, so easy to love. But she had this guilty feeling that if she liked or cared about me, she was betraying her father, and she struggled with that a lot. So if we had issues, it would be when she would go to her dad's and spend the weekend and then come home. And it was like, oh, golly, here's this little monster. And it took a day and a half to straighten her back out, and then she was back to this angel again.
It's interesting, isn't it, that transition time? We experience it as well. And, we have the boys week on, week off with their dad. And, he's a great guy. Mm-hmm. We get along, and, we catch up, and, we could have a beer together, and we see him at school drop off and that sort of thing. So there's no real drama dynamics, but just that transition between the two is interesting sometimes. It creates challenges just in itself, let alone, if there's even more dynamics, with yourself, there's, both of the kids have got different parents, are the kids' parents in their life much now?
Ryan's father, no, not really. I mean, he managed his child support through 18, and we asked him to continue through, while Ryan was in college. He said, look, would you just send your child support to him so he can eat? And sometimes he would, and sometimes he wouldn't. But Ryan really has no relationship with him at all. he came, one of the deals, he came to the graduation, and I was like, why is he here? I didn't want him here. And so he's got some issues to work out with him, hopefully. And I've always tried to encourage him that, hell, it's still your dad,
Yeah.
You only get one of them. So, but with Katelyn, she still has a relationship with her dad. He doesn't live that far away, maybe an hour and a half away from us. And it's a struggle. Her dad's a jackass sometimes. I don't know. I mean, she is so easy to love. I mean, she's hardworking. She's talented. She's she's caring. I mean, she's just this incredibly wonderful person. And sometimes she's just a jackass. We've struggled extremely through the college years of, he's going to help pay for college, and then he decides not to, and then he doesn't, and and it just became okay, never mind. If he gives any money, great. If he doesn't, it is what it is, But she saw, she kind of learned, got used to her dad, I guess, and his changes, or his moods or whatever. And, she still loves him. They have a relatively close relationship, but I don't think it's near as close as hers and my relationship, But again, I think that comes out of consistency.
Yeah.
If a kid wants anything, I think that's what they want, is consistency.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've noticed, just with our kids, they're very flexible and they're willing to take on new. But again, yeah, consistency is a must. If you're not showing up, they turn on you. And that's a fair call from them as well. I know, as a kid, my dad was far from loving, and when you don't have that, and you don't have that consistency of love, you're going to rebel against it.
Mm-hmm. And I'd say that's about what happened with Katelyn's dad, is that, and he blew so much, he blew a lot of years because of other things were priority versus being there, and even if you're not married to her mom, you still got to be there. And anyway, so that was my win,
Yeah,
for
right.
lack of a better way to put it,
Yeah. So you've it's certainly been an interesting one, and and just for the listeners out there, Rick referred to WarriorCon and the Black Book just a few moments ago, and they're pieces of some of the things I mentioned in the Warrior's Way and Living the Warrior's Way. WarriorCon is an event that is on each year, and the Black Book is a book. It's really just a system for living as such, and we talk about that. And in the podcast, I've given some description around all of those things. So I know Rick, from the Brotherhood of Warrior, and we actually learn these things ourselves, and obviously pass them down to our kids. Tell me, Rick, have you mentioned that you'd been passing on some of this stuff to Ryan? How's he taking to kind of the warrior message?
It's slow right now. I'm kind of we're at the stage now where he has the book, and giving him the time to do the reading, and I just told him, he hasn't come back to me yet. I just told him, I said, hey, read it. Read the start of it, read 10 pages. I don't care, and if it doesn't bite you, put it down. But if you see something, or you read something in there that clicks, and you got a question about it, then let's get together and talk. But, kind of maybe I learned something that, over the years that, with Ryan, it's a different approach. Put the seed in his mind and then let him go. He's got to make that decision that he wants to know something about it. And,
sure.
if I push him, then he usually responds with, digging his heels in and, being stubborn. So,
I was going to say that.
There's not a.
I was going to say that.
As far as teaching right now, there's not a lot. It's more just an introduction, and then he knows that this is what I'm trying to do with my life. So
sure. I was going to say Ryan sounds maybe a little bit like a younger Rick.
Could be, yeah. Which, yeah, I never thought of it that way, but wow, geez, that I think that would fit. Wow.
It's
that's a revelation right there, James.
I'm glad I had it for you, but it's just interesting
I want to mention that to my wife and see what she says. I'm like, holy crap.
it's interesting the dynamics, and I get to hear a lot of these conversations, and obviously stepsons of my own. Our little guy Che, he's 8. He's very much like me, and it really takes something when you see that in you, to recognise that, to be able to respond to that in a different way. And me and Che have had our bumping of heads many, many times for the first few years. I've been with my partner now 7 years, and we've bumped heads a lot. And one day it just clicked for me that, wow, he's exactly like me, and I need to look in the mirror and see what I'm reflecting back to him. It's
right.
It was really interesting for me to experience that. And then on the other side, much like your daughter, our other boy, Indy, he's 10 years old now. He's very touchy-feely, very loving, very much just the people pleaser. And what I realized was I just need to give more of that love to Che and show that more of that intimacy, and that, like you say, consistency, being there all the time, and all those things that you wouldn't normally do. You want to respond with your younger self, that more aggressive kind of self, and I was just the same. I was harsh in my younger years as well, and you realise that if you can kind of flip the switch on that, things shift around. It's interesting the way life mirrors itself back to us.
This is something that I'm picking up so much recently, and look at it. It's all about what is the result that I want, and if I can ask myself what is the result I want before I make the approach, I usually will change my approach.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it's not about winning or losing. It's about the result. And if the result that we have a better relationship, and that they were successful, then that's what's supposed to happen. And if I tailor my approach around result versus maybe what I feel like I want at the moment to win or be right, things go much better. So.
Yeah, I totally understand that. So, like, you guys, you've been together for a while now. What do you see in the future? Like, the kids are getting much older now, and that sort of thing. What happens further down the line?
Well, with Ryan, like I said, it's been this work in progress for so long that I really have high hopes. I hope he's reading the Warrior book and something's clicking. Maybe it doesn't click today. Maybe it's 5 years down the road or something. I don't know. Right now, it's just trying to be still be there, but just as an example. I'm not telling him how to do anything. I'm just kind of maybe just showing him. And
sure.
And I have found one of the things with Ryan that I've been trying to do more recently is reach out to him, once a month, a couple times a month, and just, hey, how you doing? You want to go to lunch? What's happening at work? You want to, pick up a burger or something? And just so making sure that I'm initiating some time together, so that kind of get back on that, being there, the consistency of being a part of his life regularly. Because as he grew up and kind of went out and doing his own thing, he'd come back every once in a while, but the consistency wasn't there as much. And that has to be my effort. He's 20 or hell, he's 30 years old now, so I have to be the one to initiate that stuff sometimes, not just him. So
yeah, it's interesting. As kids get older, you kind of think, oh well, they're going their own way. But if we want to continue that relationship, they're not our blood, they're not our biological kids, but they are our kids, and we've essentially grown up with them. And we need to stay in communication. I think that's a good thing, a great thing you bring up, just to remember that, to make the effort, because a lot of people, it falls away.
It has to be our effort, Yeah, and it's not just, hey, we didn't just do our job and now they're off and grown, I mean, Ryan and Katelyn will always be my kids. When I got married, we made a special deal with the ceremony of, I gave each of them a ring as well. And,
yeah, cool.
And I told them then, I said, look, I'm not your dad. I said, but I'll do everything in my power to raise you as best I can and always be there. And, that commitment still going, hell, for Ryan's 30, but, here we are, we're still going. Katelyn's going to get married this, next March. And, so she's moving on to whole another phase of her life, and just wonderful, wonderful part of the process, trying to be the dad who, I'm still me. She's going to have a big fancy wedding, and unfortunately I am still me, and I look at it and go, you want to spend how much? What? And that's been I had to figure out how to get through that. Luckily I watched my brother go through this a couple of years ago and learned from him, kind of some advice that I had given him. He was complaining about, wow, it's just a big party to them, and, they're just pissing away all this money and blah, blah, blah. And I'm with him saying, hey, I get it. You're absolutely right. They're just turning it into a big party for one day, but it's her party. So the advice I gave him was, find out what you're okay with. What do you want to bring to the gift, as a gift to the party, and set that magic number and give it to her. And that's it. And then go enjoy the party. Don't sit back and worry about, what this costs, what this, just make the number. And so I did that. I did that same thing. And my wife and I sat down and we discussed it. And I use her as a barometer of, look, am I just being a cheap old son bitch, You're, you know what a wedding is and what a woman wants. And so we came up with what was a number I could deal with and a number that she felt was reasonable. And so I said, okay. And I called my daughter and said, here, this is it. Here's the check. You guys can do whatever you want with it. You want to have the big ass wedding party, then you do it. Yep. If it costs more than this, it costs more than that. But I don't have any more than that. So, but I'll be at your wedding and I'll be smiling and having a great time. And that was, I tell you what, it's been a fantastic approach.
Yeah,
it's taken all of the stress and everything out of the whole process for me.
It's interesting, Rick, and I'll wrap this up soon because I know we've been going a little while now. But what I'm getting from your whole conversation, like this whole conversation we've been having, is, obviously you started out with a fairly rough upbringing and first half of your life kind of thing, and you've really turned it around. And like I would kind of say, like you've got to be proud of yourself because you actually, like, now seem very stable. You seem very like you're passing on really quality values to your kids and good learnings and stuff. It's for me, looking from the outside, it's like, wow, like you've turned yourself around, but not only that, you're passing it down to your kids. And this is what, we have the discussion about leaders raising leaders. And like, I see that in you. I see, like you've had that rough time. You've learnt your lessons. It's like you turn that all around for yourself, and now you're using it for your kids as well. So I congratulate you and kind of feel kind of honoured to have you on the podcast, and just to very grateful for your sharing, because a lot of us go through rough times. Not everyone goes through what you've been through. Not everyone has the challenges that you've faced, but not everyone deals with them in a way that they can be proud of. And I think you can be proud of what you're doing. So, mate, I'll just ask you one last question kind of thing. Is there one kind of tip or parting thought that you would want to leave with our listeners?
This one keeps coming back to me, and something I heard in Warrior. Fun plus love equals connection. And so have fun. Have fun with your kids. Have fun with your stepkids. Because you can love them all day long, but that doesn't equal connection. But when you're having fun, you love your kids and you're having fun with them, you're making a connection. And if you're making a connection with your kids, you're doing the right thing. So that, I just heard that, a year ago, but it clicked for me when I heard it. That's it. It makes perfect sense. All of the lessons that I wanted to, scream at them and show them and teach them, it really all came back to connection, and they'll learn from me if we're connected. And so when I heard that fun plus love equals connection, it made a lot of sense to me.
That's awesome, mate. I'm glad you shared that. I have heard that before as well through Warrior, and you're exactly right. It's I think that's a piece of gold for our listeners. Rick, again, mate, just wanted to thank you a ton for coming on today. Thank you for sharing your story and really sharing the lessons there. It's as I said, massive changes, massive lessons that you're passing on to your kids, and that's what I see as a leader, raising leaders. So thanks very much, Rick, for coming on today.
No, thank you, James. I trust me, I've gotten a ton out of this. Just rolling it all through my head again. This has been a great day.
Thanks, Rick. Cheers, mate.
Would you like to learn more about how stepdads across the globe are joining forces in raising the next generation of leaders? Then head to www.stepdadsuccess.com and grab all the show notes plus a copy of the brand new tactical guide for creating more happiness, health, wealth, and wisdom as a stepdad. And if you liked the podcast, please share it with other stepdads you know and leave us a review on iTunes. Again, that's www.stepdadsuccess.com for all the show notes and tactical guide. Come and join the new breed of stepdads, the growing group of leaders raising leaders.